binding of a free and vibrant press. It's also the reason why we now require that every new agent and analyst also study the FBI's interactions with Dr. Martin Luther King. And as part of that curriculum, visit the King Memorial. I'm the 7th director of the FBI, as you heard, and I sit at the same desk, I think, that all the prior directors have used, and it has glass on it so that I don't ruin it. And on the right corner of that desk, under the glass, I keep a single sheet of paper. It's a memo from October of 1963 from Director Hoover to the Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. And it's a memo from Director Hoover on behalf of the FBI asking for permission to bug and wiretap Martin Luther King. It's 5 sentences long, and it's utterly without factual content. It simply asserts, quote, there's a communist influence in the racial situation, close quote. There's no date limitation, there's no geographic limitation, there's no technique limitation. It simply says, we need to wiretap this guy. Director Hoover signed it, Bobby Kennedy signed it, and we were off to the races. But here's the hard part. I'm not telling this story, and I don't keep that document there as a criticism to pick on Hoover or Kennedy. I have no doubt that both of those men believed they were doing the right thing. They were certain that their cause was just and certain that their facts were right. And in the absence of constraint and oversight, there was no one to tell them otherwise. I keep that piece of paper in that spot to remind me of what we in the FBI are responsible for and what we as humans are capable of, and why it is vital that power be overseen and constrained, including my power and that of the FBI. We put those sessions, Holocaust Museum and the King curriculum, at the very beginning of our training program for analysts and agents. And the reason we start their education there is because we believe it is foundational. It tells us who we are and what we are. Learning the law and how to shoot and how to conduct an arrest in an appropriate way is really important stuff and hard. But it's much harder and more important, in our view, to understand and internalize the long-term ramifications of prejudice and bigotry, the value of oversight. It's much harder to fight against unconscious bias and the sting of subtle racism. These are more than just lessons to be learned. We believe they are living principles that have to be ingrained into everything that we do, become part of who we are. We have to build a deep understanding. We must know it. We must nurture it now so that it can save us later. Thank you for helping us be better in educating ourselves. Now I want to thank you for your work in community outreach, because we work hard in the FBI not only to educate ourselves, again with your help, but to build bridges with your help to the communities we serve and protect. We are listening to people's concerns all over this country, and we are trying to let them know that we can help. We're trying to create a sense of trust, a sense of solidarity, so they know in hard times they can call us and they can count on us to protect them. We want them to know that when we can't prevent a hate crime, our agents and analysts will move heaven and earth to find those responsible and bring them to justice. And our victim specialists, who are the angels of the FBI, will do everything they can to help heal those who are suffering, their families and their communities. They will explain what the agents need to do, why they're doing the things that they're doing. They will host town halls for frightened citizens. They will clean up crime scenes. And if you have never seen the painstaking work that goes into restoring the items, the clothing, the furniture, the rooms of loved ones so they don't see the stain of that crime, it's an extraordinary thing. They will plan funerals. They will find counseling. They will wipe away tears. I call them the angels of the FBI because they carry this tremendous weight that they lift from the victims onto themselves. They do it for people who are living their own worst nightmare. We are not just law enforcement. We are part of the community. We are in this together. We understand that some of the communities that we work in don't fully trust law enforcement. They may not believe that we in law enforcement have their best interests at heart. And that's something painful, but that we in law enforcement have to confront. It's something we need to understand deep down and work to change. Everybody in this room knows that officers and deputies and agents signed up for this work because they want to do good for other people. They want to help other people, no matter what they look like, no matter what they believe, no matter who they love. They signed up to help all the people all the time. But we have to do a better job of not just explaining that to the communities we serve and protect. We need to do a better job of understanding those communities, especially those with the greatest need for police. We need to know the people who live there, the challenges they confront, the fears that they have, the hopes that they have. As law enforcement officers, we especially need a full understanding of the history and journey of Black America, the hopes, the dreams, the disappointments, and the pain. We need to know the history of law enforcement's interaction with Black America because Black people cannot forget it. We need to know what's happening in all our communities, not what we think is happening, or even what the people we're serving think is happening, but what is really happening. And for that, we need better information in this country. Now, I know data is a boring word. People tend to tune out when you start talking about data. But it's vital because only data, only information gives us a full picture of what's happening. It's what smart people use to make hard decisions. We at the FBI have been pressing for more data in this country for the last 2 years, and we're going to keep pressing for it. Data related to violent crime and homicides, data related to officer-involved shootings, data related to altercations with citizens, and attacks against law enforcement officers, and yes, data related to hate crime. We must do a better job of tracking and reporting hate crime to fully understand what is happening in our communities and in our country so we can stop it. Some jurisdictions do not report hate crime data. Some say there were no hate crimes in their jurisdiction, which would be awesome if it were true. We must continue to impress upon our state and local counterparts how important it is that we track and report hate crime data. It's not something we can ignore, even though it's painful. It's not something we can sweep under the rug, even though it's painful. And lastly, we need to know and believe in good policing in this country. We need to live it. Because up close, respectful, firm, fair, lawful, transparent law enforcement is what has always worked best in every neighborhood in this country. And to take one example, African Americans, like all Americans, know that good policing like that is the path to prosperity and to safety. We have to stand together, law enforcement, advocates like the ADL, community groups, and people from all walks of life understand what we need and insist upon it. And as part of that, we have to work to understand and recognize ourselves in one another. I sometimes think maybe the reason we struggle as a nation is because we've come to see only what the other represents at face value, instead of who that person really is. Who are they really? I've long believed that it's hard to hate up close. It is hard to hate someone when you know their story. It's long past time that we started learning each other's stories. I was in Orlando last June in the wake of the Pulse nightclub attack. And I wanted to go down there just to meet privately with the first responders without any media, just to thank them for what they had done. And we met in a big church. And I spoke very briefly just to express the FBI's gratitude. Then I said, look, I'd love to take questions. And a hand went up, and a man in uniform stood up. And he said, my name is Menachem Green, and I'm Jewish, which confused me, but he went on. He said, I'm Jewish. He said, I was there that night. I ran towards the sound of gunfire, and next to me was a Muslim officer. He said, I'm quoting him, he said, we were Jew and Muslim and Christian. We were white and black and Latino and Asian. We were rushing towards danger to help people we didn't know, to help people we didn't know what they looked like, we didn't know what they believed, he said. We didn't know anything except they were people who needed us. And then he said very quietly, I wanted you to know that. And then he finished by saying, I think the American people should know that. And then he sat down. And there were more questions, and after it finished, an officer came up to me and sheepishly said, I'm the Muslim guy, that was a true story. And I said to that officer, and I said to Menachem Green, I said, I'm going to tell that story all over this country, because I do know it, but I think the American people need to know that story. We confront divisiveness. We confront fear and ignorance and prejudice. We live in a world with a whole lot of coarseness and a whole lot of lack of civility. And as a society, we have to do better. Police officers of different faiths, from different backgrounds, running towards danger to help strangers, that makes us better. Muslim activists who raised over $100,000 to repair Jewish headstones vandalized in St. Louis and Philadelphia, that makes us better. Good Samaritans who painted over the vandalized slurs written on a neighbor's house so when they came home they would never have to see those slurs. A defaced sign on a Spanish-language church that local pastors covered with posters that said, "Love wins." A lawn sign that says, "Whoever you are and wherever you're from, you're welcome here." Stories like those make us better. You make us better. For more than 100 years, you have advocated and fought for fairness and equality, for inclusion and acceptance. You never were indifferent or complacent. The word silence is not in your vocabulary. You have advocated for voting rights and on immigration issues. You fought against anti-Muslim prejudice. You fought against cyberbullying. You stood up for LGBT and gender equality. You have pushed and prodded for hate crime legislation. And you've helped us find terrorists all over this country and all over this world. And for all of that, we at the FBI are grateful. As an agency for sure, but also as Americans. My thanks to this room full of people who have devoted their lives to ensuring that evil does not hold the field. To Jonathan Greenblatt and David Friedman and Michael Lieberman and so many others who have chosen to do that with their lives. And on behalf of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, thank you for standing by us, for giving us the benefit of your experience, for making us better, and for serving this country alongside us. And so I close my letter 3 years later. Love, the FBI.
Thank you, Director Comey. So, there's a Washington, D.C. out there, and it's time to go see some of it. We're going to head to our off-site visits. All of the buses are going to be lined up outside the doors going this way. If you've forgotten what you've registered for, you can check on your app, or you can check at the registration table. But each bus will have a sign in the window indicating where it's going.